One of the unique characteristics of the Express console family is the different setup options or the different hardware platforms that they come in. For example, the 4896 and the 72144 are larger boards with quite a bit of faders. In actuality, though, the Express console is almost identical in the way it operates. In fact, the keypad on all of the Express consoles remains identical, but what does change between the various consoles is how the faders are set up in the configuration of the faders. On this 4896, for instance, you'll see that there are very large banks of faders up at the top as well as a smaller bank of faders down here. This is the same for the Express 72144. It looks just the same, only it's quite a bit larger than this. What I want to do right now is talk to you about the different configuration options for these faders on the 4896 and the 72144, as they differ slightly from the fader configuration options on the 2448. So we'll talk about that right now. Where I do this configuration is actually in the Setup menu. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my Setup menu by pressing Setup. And remember, we'll be covering more of the Setup menu in greater detail in a different chapter. But right now, I just want, for our purposes now, I want to talk about how we configure our faders on this console. That is done in option number 1, System Settings. So I'm going to press 1, Enter. And the last entry in the list is number 15, which says Scene Mode. I can select number 15 and press Enter. And you'll see that there are two options here for scene mode on this Express console. I have one scene mode and two scene mode. I'm going to go into one scene mode first by pushing 1, Enter. And what I'm actually configuring are the top banks of faders. In one scene mode, this is basically the first fader is channel 1, and the last fader on the bottom row is channel 96, and all of the channels in between. So these faders are always channels. So this means I can just bring up faders, and I'm just bringing up the channel that corresponds to the number that's on the fader. So I can run up to 96 channels just on faders alone, or on the Express 72144, I can actually do 144 channels on the faders. And that's in single scene mode. Back into Setup, option number 1, Enter. Again, number 15 for scene mode. I'm going to put the console into two scene mode right now by pushing 2, Enter. And again, my setup display will tell me that I'm in 2 scene. Now what I've done is I've configured the two top banks of faders to duplicate each other. At the top row, it's channel 1 at the first fader. The last fader is channel 48. And then it's, again, channel 1 on the bottom row and 48 at the very end. So that allows me to set up a scene in the top row and set up a different scene in the bottom row, and then crossfade between them by running my crossfaders. Now in both of these modes, I will always have 24 dedicated faders down in this section of the console. These are always submasters. And we'll go into submasters in greater detail as well in a different chapter, but just remember that submasters are basically a way I can put an entire scene or entire look into one fader and run it on here. And in either fader mode, on the Express 4896 or the 72144, you always have 24 dedicated submasters. So that is the method on which you would change the fader mode for the Express 4896 or the 72144, and you can set it up however you need to your liking.